You wake up to sunlight streaming through your blinds. Your phone shows it's already 10:30 a.m. You had plans today, important ones. Exercise. That project you've been putting off. Maybe even start that book you bought months ago. But something feels heavy. Not your body, but your mind. You reach for your phone and start scrolling. Just 5 minutes, you tell yourself. 2 hours later, you're still in bed, now feeling worse than when you woke up. What just happened? You labeled it a lazy day. But was it really laziness, or something deeper? I spent years calling myself lazy. My apartment would get messy. Projects would go unfinished. I'd cancel plans to stay home watching shows I didn't even enjoy. And every time, I'd beat myself up. Why am I so lazy? The truth? I wasn't lazy. I was afraid. Most of what we call laziness is actually fear in disguise. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of not meeting our own impossible standards. Think about it. When you put off that creative project, are you actually lazy, or afraid it won't be as good as you imagine? When you avoid the gym, is it laziness, or fear of discomfort, or being seen as a beginner? Psychologist Alfred Adler, whose work inspired modern cognitive therapy, identified this pattern a century ago. He saw that what looks like avoidance behavior is often a self-protective mechanism. We avoid situations where we might fail because failure threatens our self-image. The one rule that changed everything for me sounds deceptively simple: never call yourself lazy again. Instead, ask, what am I afraid of right now? The morning I described earlier? That wasn't laziness. It was fear of facing a day where I might not measure up to my own expectations. Scrolling wasn't the problem. It was a symptom of avoiding something that felt threatening. This isn't just positive thinking. It's about accurate thinking. Because when you misdiagnose the problem as laziness, you'll never find the right solution. Let me walk you through how this works in practice. Next time you notice yourself procrastinating or avoiding, pause. Take a breath. Then ask, what am I afraid might happen if I do this thing? Maybe you're avoiding your creative project because you're afraid it will confirm your suspicion that you're not talented enough. Maybe you're skipping the gym because you're afraid of the discomfort, or of comparing yourself to others. The psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, famous for his work on flow states, found that the moments before starting a challenging activity are often the most psychologically painful. Our brains forecast effort and uncertainty, triggering resistance. But once we start, that resistance often melts away. This explains why the hardest part is often just beginning. The fear is almost always worse than the reality. A technique I've found powerful comes from author Steven Pressfield's book, The War of Art. He calls this resistance the enemy within, and suggests naming it, recognizing it as separate from you. There's resistance again, trying to convince me I'm lazy. Nice try. Sometimes the fear is more complex. Many of us carry what psychologists call emotional baggage, past experiences that taught us to avoid certain feelings or situations. If you were criticized harshly as a child when you failed at something, your brain learns to avoid trying new things altogether. I had a client who couldn't finish his novel. Each time he sat down to write, he'd suddenly remember urgent emails or decide his desk needed reorganizing. When we explored the fear behind it, he realized he was terrified of finishing, because once finished, his work would be judged. As long as it remained in progress, he was safe from criticism. Once he named this fear, he created a new relationship with it. Yes, people might not like my book. That's part of creating anything worthwhile. His laziness disappeared when the fear was acknowledged. Ryan Holiday, drawing from Stoic philosophy in his book, The Obstacle is the Way, suggests turning these fears into opportunities. What if your resistance to a task is actually showing you exactly what you need to grow? When you catch yourself avoiding something important, try this. Notice the avoidance without judgment. I'm scrolling instead of starting my project. Ask what you're afraid might happen. Be specific. I'm afraid I'll realize I don't have what it takes. Question that fear. Is that definitely true? What's the worst that could happen? Could I handle that? Take one tiny step forward. Not the whole project, just one small action that breaks the spell of avoidance. Sometimes the fear points to something legitimate. Maybe you're avoiding work because you've chosen a path that doesn't align with your true interests. The answer isn't forcing yourself through willpower, it's listening to what that resistance might be telling you. I avoided writing for years. I called myself lazy, procrastinated endlessly, and felt terrible about it. When I finally asked what I was afraid of, the answer surprised me. I was afraid of being seen, of putting my thoughts into the world where they could be judged. Once I recognized that, I could work with it rather than against it. The magic of this one rule, never calling yourself lazy, is that it replaces shame with curiosity. And shame has never motivated lasting change. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on mindset shows that how we talk to ourselves drastically affects our ability to persist through challenges. When you label yourself lazy, you're adopting what she calls a fixed mindset, believing your traits are unchangeable. But when you get curious about your fears, you shift to a growth mindset that sees challenges as opportunities to develop. This isn't about giving yourself excuses. It's about giving yourself understanding. Because once you understand the real problem, you can find the real solution. Your lazy days aren't character flaws, they're data. They're showing you where your fears live. And fear, unlike laziness, can be worked with. Remember, you are not lazy. You are human, with human fears and human needs. Start treating yourself with that understanding, and watch as the things you've been avoiding suddenly feel possible again. So tomorrow morning, when that feeling of heaviness comes, don't reach for your phone. Reach for curiosity instead. Ask what you're afraid of. Listen to the answer with compassion. Then take one small step forward. Because the opposite of laziness isn't productivity, it's courage.